ado, it's your boy Andre Spruell, and you are tuning in to Middle of the Fence podcast. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day, whether you're listening, watching, or both. As I like to say, time is the most valuable thing on this earth because we can spend it but can't make it back. So, as always, thank you for your time. And today is the second installment of this Middle of the Fence podcast series. And if you haven't checked out the first episode yet, please be sure to check it out on your favorite podcast streaming platform. And also be sure to check it out on YouTube. And please be sure to subscribe so you can be the first to be notified when the latest episode drops. And today's episode, titled Being a Black Man as a Kid. In this episode, we are going to delve into the adultification of black children, the advantages of growing up on the tough terrain side, and the importance of exercising gratitude and empathy. And before I get into any of that, I wanted to delve quickly into my ethnic background, and because it is a factor in the experiences growing up on both sides of the fence, and also too from the first episode, as there has been a 270% increase in multiracial couples and families, and that number is going to keep getting higher based on the trend. And so, like I mentioned, I am Black American, and that comes from my father's side. And the history with my father's side of the family is the fact that most of them came from southern states such as Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, and have been there for generations. And as a result, there was a generation of my bloodline from that side that were actually slaves at one point in this country. So because of that, that's why I say Black American. And as much as I would love to give my DNA to one of those 23andMe or Ancestry.com type of websites, I'm very hesitant, and I'm sure I'm not the only one that falls into that category. But aside from that, I am proud of my culture, and I'm proud to be Black. And obviously, there's a long history that comes along with that, and so many sets of challenges, especially in this country, and not only in the U.S. or the Affluent Acres side, but generally throughout the world. And for my other half of my ethnicity is my Argentinian side, and that comes from my mother, who came to this country when she was 5 years old. And the backstory for why my family moved from Argentina to the U.S. is because there was a 10-year period of war going on in Argentina, and it was called the Dirty War. And in Spanish, it was called La Guerra Sucia. And it was arguably the darkest period in Argentinian history, where the left side and the right side were battling each other, and as a result, the innocent citizens of Argentina were involved. And some of the likes that were happening were the fact that there was children, as soon as they were born, getting taken from hospitals, and innocent people dying and things like that. And to this day, there are people that they were born during that time period and have no idea who their blood relatives are. And my grandfather, my mom's father, I can't remember which side, whether it was the left side or the right side, that wanted him to fight to push their agenda. But he said, F all that, I don't believe in this stuff, and was actually on the run from the government for about a year. But luckily, he was able to come to this country and escape the horrors that were going on in Argentina during that time, and was able to start a brand new life and things like that. And When it comes to Argentina, everyone knows us for our soccer, campeones del mundo, reigning World Cup champions, two-time Copa reigning champions, che, boludo, mate, caramel, dulce de leche, all that fun stuff. But just wanted to preface the ethnic background before I delved into the topics for today. So, the first topic: adultification of Black children. And kids on the tough terrain side, frankly, just have to grow up much quicker than their peers or the average child that grew up on the Affluent Acres side, just because of their circumstances. So the definition of adultification: the process or fact of treating or considering a child as if they are an adult, usually in a way that is wrong or harmful. And going to school on the Affluent Acres side, I went to private school on the Affluent Acres side, and obviously because of that, and the high tuition costs, can't even imagine how much tuition is now for high school and middle school and things like that. But most of my classmates were white, and there were very few minorities. But I just felt that there was the way that teachers treated students of color compared to the white students. It felt like there was not as much patience towards the Black students or students of color, and teachers seemed to be quicker to reprimand them as a result. And don't chastise me, because obviously it's not like every single teacher was doing that, but it was something that a handful of them were doing, and it was something that students of color were able to recognize. And the historical context of the adultification of Black children, according to Dumas and Nelson's 2016 study titled "Reimagining Black Boyhood Toward a Critical Framework for Educational Research," it was mentioned that the origins of this discrimination began during chattel slavery, where Black children as young as 3 years old were rarely perceived as being worthy of playtime and were severely punished for exhibiting normal childlike behaviors. So that's why I mentioned the school aspect, because this is a historical context that traces back all the way to the slavery days. We're talking 1600s, 1700s into today. And children on the tough terrain side having to grow up much quicker. For my experience, that happened when I was 10 years old. At the age of 10, 11, 12, around that age is when most kids get to talk about the birds and the bees, aka the sex talk. But instead, at 10 years old, I got to talk about what it was like to be a Black man in this country. For example, what to do when getting pulled over, asking for a receipt when I make a purchase, and if there is anyone that I was interested in romantically, I had to let them know, hey, even though for those watching, you can tell that my skin is on the team light skin side, but it was important to let romantic partners know, hey, I am Black and Argentinian. So again, at 10 years old, being told what to do when getting pulled over, that I still do to this day in my late 20s. When you get pulled over, you roll all the windows down, take out your license, insurance, and registration, put it in the passenger seat, and then put your hands right on the steering wheel and just talk to the officer and follow and comply as best you can, and just hope that the interaction doesn't last longer than it needs to, or pray to God that it doesn't escalate more than it needs to, and then go about your day. And the fear of driving as a Black man will be a topic for another day, hint, hint. And asking for a receipt It was something that when I was younger, I felt like I did more. But now that we're in the age of digital receipts and things like that, prime digital age, that's something that just doesn't happen as much, frankly. But there was a there was an instance, speaking of receipts and paying for stuff, where I was reminded that although I'm biracial, I'm still seen as a black man in this country. So when I was 16 years old, uh, I was a high school basketball player. Ball was life. The Nike Elite socks, whatever the newest wave of sneakers were. At one point, I wore a sleeve, sometimes a headband if I really wanted to show out. Ball was life. And for those that played or those that know, basketball is a winter sport. So one day we were supposed to have practice, but the practice got canceled because I believe it was snow and then a combination of just really cold weather. Like, it was too cold to go to practice. So I was with my brother, and at the time he was 14, 15. And our ride that was going to pick us up from the school bus stop was going to be a little late. So I was like, hey, let's just cross the street, go to the Dick's Sporting Goods. I need to get some compression shorts and another pair of Nike Elite socks circa 2012, 2013. Wouldn't hurt. So, so we go in the store, and again, it is dead of winter. So we have on oversized jackets, hoodies underneath that, scullies, and our backpacks because we just came back from school. So we're walking around the store, and then 2-3 minutes later, the manager, who happened to be black, asked us to check our bags at the front. And really didn't think anything of it. I was like, okay, whatever. But not too long after my brother and I entered the store, there was a group of 3 white kids that came in. By the way, they weren't on our school bus, but they came in not too long after us, dressed just like us. Oversized jackets, hoodies, scullies, and backpacks because they were coming from school too. And so my brother and I, and then the other group of white kids were in the store for around the same time. And we left first. And as we were leaving and got our bags, I asked the manager, I was like, excuse me, sir, why didn't you ask them to check their bags? And he's like, it's store policy. I was like, well, if it's store policy, then you should have asked them to check their bags too, because they bought their bags and, just like us, but you didn't ask them. And then he said, it's store policy, my man. So as soon as he said it the second time, frankly, I understood what it was. It went deeper than a store policy. And it was something that I didn't really know how to feel or how to react about, if I'm being honest. And obviously, for those that know, students of color that went to private school in an Affluent Acres type of neighborhood, you hear racist jokes from time to time and things like that. But when you are the subject of an act of racism to that regard, whether it's something on the scale of getting asked to check your bags and another group doesn't, or on the scale of getting detained by police because you seem to fit a description that doesn't even resemble you or anything like that. It feels very dehumanizing. And although I can't pinpoint exactly how I felt or can remember, what exactly my thought process was, the one thing that I do remember from that is that just coming back home and just not being proud of my ethnic background and wishing, oh my gosh, I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I was thinking what if I wasn't, black? What if I was just Argentinian? Or what if I looked a little differently and things like that. Like how much different will my life look? Is this type of stuff going to keep happening to me? And those were the type of thoughts that were going on in my mind at that moment. So and again, that's where the biracial component comes in that type of situation. And dating life, just to briefly touch on that, growing up, obviously you meet a girl's family, and most of the time the girls that I was interested in were not as ethnically diverse as I am, to put it lightly. And as a result, kind of felt, if, let's say, the parents were a little racist or may have been a little uncomfortable with their daughter talking to someone who didn't look similar to them or that didn't grow up similar to them and things like that. And I feel like that can happen at any level, and I feel like things are changing because of the growth and continued rise of interracial couples and things like that. But when I was younger, it was in the very early stages and not as common as it is now. So those were the types of challenges that kids like myself faced growing up, and there's people that still face that type of stuff today. So delving into the next topic, growing up on the tough terrain side and the positives from it. So one major advantage is the resilience and adaptability that you get, which is usually modeled through your parents, and in particular, usually by a single mother. And approximately 30% of single mother families in the U.S. live below the poverty line, with Black and Hispanic mothers experiencing disproportionately higher rates. And first off, whoa, right? And second, I just couldn't help but to think of my mom. And I will say that it's not like my father was completely absent from my life, and things like that. But growing up, I lived with my mom, and we all lived in an extended household with me, my siblings, my mom, grandma, grandpa, aunt, uncle, cousin. If you're Hispanic or have a Latin background, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And but I just grew up with her and that side of the family more. So because of that, day in and day out, I was able to see her resilience. And the examples that I can think of is, my mom was a high school graduate. She wasn't able to go to college because she had her first child at 18 years old. So again, that's something that will make you forced to grow up really, really quick, regardless of what age, but especially at 18 years old. And because of that, she had to make sure that she constantly had jobs to support us. And for many years, she would work multiple jobs. She would work her 9-to-5 job, come home, make sure we had dinner, and then work her night shift at Pathmark. And if you remember Pathmark, then you're showing your age a little bit. I can't front, but yeah. So she would work 2 jobs just to make sure that we were able to get a private school education and do better with our lives. And even when she had a just regular full-time job, there was many times where she would get a job and then would have to leave it to support the family, and then figure out how to pay tuition for my older sister who was going to high school for the first time, and then figuring out how she was going to pay tuition for my brother and I in elementary and middle school, and then my little sister, who was just starting kindergarten and things like that. Like, oh my gosh, like how am I going to do this? But instead of feeling bad and complaining about her situation and things like that, she just always found a way through. And that's where that resilience came in. And when you see that day in, day out, it rubs on you. and affects you in a positive way. And not saying that those on the Affluent Acres side aren't resilient. Obviously, it is a factor over there as well, but the resilience is just developed at a much earlier age on the tough terrain side, because you see it exemplified through the single parent, and as a result, it's like, if my mom can, make anything happen out of thin air and always find a way to make things happen, then there's no reason why I can't do the same as well. The second advantage of growing up on the tough terrain side: street smarts and awareness. So street smarts equals life experience. That is the simplest way that I would put it. And some examples of street smarts. Again, growing up in a high crime rated neighborhood, I wasn't allowed to go outside and walk on the streets alone. I wasn't able to ride my bike through the neighborhood and things like that. But when I was out in public, you just are able to sense things and start to tap into your intuition from a younger age. And so when I was a teenager, there were certain situations, you're at a high school party, you're doing things that you shouldn't, but just getting that sense, hey, you know what? I feel like something's really going to escalate right now. Like, whether it's like cops about to come or kids getting into a fight or something like that. So it's like, we should start wrapping this up and get the fuck out of here, And also, there was an instance in college where there was a party, everyone's enjoying themselves, and there was kids that were getting riled up, getting ready to fight each other. And it was something that, it was like, all right, you guys can stick around and find out, but from my life experience, like, I am out of here. And I would say that street smart is better than being book smart. Obviously, it's okay to be book smart. Like, I'm someone that loves to read and always likes to learn new things. But anyone can learn new things. But going through life experiences and actually living it, learning from it, and growing from it is gonna, I feel like, get you much further in life versus someone that just knows a bunch of random facts and things like that and are comfortable with being in their own little bubble and not willing to venture outside of that and allow themselves to experience life and all the ups and downs that come along with it, and grow and get better from it as a result. And the third advantage of growing up on the tough terrain side is the appreciation for hard work and perseverance. So growing up on the tough terrain side gives you no choice but to work hard, because if not, you surrender to your circumstances, and then it just leads to nowhere as a result. And people, as a result, through the hard work, often on the tough terrain side, they're not in corporate jobs more often than not, where you show up 9 to 5, you're salaried, you have all these benefits, and you have that extra layer of security from your job. More often than not, on the tough terrain side, a lot of people have to work temp jobs where they're at a job that's contracted for 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, and then after that, the job gets to decide if they want to stay or not. My first ever job was like that, by the way. And again, hourly jobs. So because they have to work hourly jobs, there are times where, they are really sick and should just stay home and rest up and recuperate, but they need to make sure that their family has money to survive and things like that. So they'll still push through and go to work, even if they're not feeling well, or it means sacrificing their health as a result. And in 2019, to put this further into perspective, in 2019, the typical median black worker earned 24.4% less per hour than the typical white worker. This is an even larger wage gap than in 1979 when it was 16.4%. And, that just really adds a light on that issue. And then also, too, you just have to work when you grow up on the tough terrain side and have an opportunity to work in Affluent Acres type of job. You have to work twice as hard to get there because you simply just don't have as much connections as those on the Affluent Acres side who, let's say someone that just graduated college that grew up on the Affluent Acres side their whole life, they have a family member or a friend of a friend that can get them into a high position almost right away, versus someone that followed the same exact steps that grew up on the tough terrain side, but literally have to either go job to job to reach that same type of level, or they simply have to stay at one place and put in their years and their time to even sniff an opportunity similar to the types of opportunities that those on the Affluent Acres side get a lot sooner. And the next topic, growing up with gratitude and empathy. And faith played a major role in exemplifying and showing gratitude. And because what can be given to you can be taken from you. And gratitude, again, it's something that's not completely ignored on the Affluent Acres side. So, but on the tough terrain side, growing up and even into adulthood now, it's just something that's just spoken about more and mentioned more. Because you don't grow up in a favorable position, you tend to be a lot more grateful for the things that you do have, because when you grow up in an Affluent Acres type of neighborhood, you have the financial stability, you can grow up and play whatever sport you want, you're in a really safe neighborhood, and things like that, which is no fault of those types of kids that grew up in those areas. But as a result, you may not have as much gratitude because you're just so used to, getting what you want and being comfortable, but on the tough terrain side, you tend to have a lot more gratitude because of your circumstances. And for my day job, I work in real estate, and a lot of the transactions that we do are in the Affluent Acre side, and then we also have half of our transactions in tough terrain side. So we've done deals in Orange, my hometown, the Newark, New Jerseys of the world, the Irvington, New Jerseys of the world, and things like that. And the biggest difference is that when I've worked with the tenants that are on the tough terrain side, it's a scary situation when a home is being sold because, they can get kicked out and have to figure out where they're going to live and things like that. But almost every single tenant, if I had to, put a percentage on it, I would say over 80% of the tenants always would mention God. And even though they don't know what was going to be next for them, whether they were going to be able to stay and everything was going to be fine, or whether rent was going to be raised, or whether they were going to get kicked out, they always seem to just thank God and say things along the lines of, I just put it in God's hands. There's nothing else that I can really do except try my best and figure things out. But I'm grateful for, what I have, and just know that whatever is next is going to be better than what I'm currently at. And that's an example of gratitude being shown. And the empathy portion of it, for me personally, the empathy is something that I pride myself on. And because I grew up on the middle of the fence, I always realized that there's someone that always has more than you, and there's someone that always has less than you, and as a result, I just never felt that I was better than anyone else. Being confident is one thing, obviously, but never felt like I'm better than someone else. And as a result, growing up and going to school on the Affluent Acres side, whenever there was a kid that, like, let's say, wasn't considered popular, whenever he would get picked on or she or anything like that, and I would see it, I would be one of the few students to just stick up for them and just be like, yo, like, why are you messing with them? Like, leave them alone. They're not doing anything to bother you, And there was one story in particular where there was a student freshman year of high school, and he was a local kid. So my private high school that I went to, there was kids that literally, like myself, whose family drove 25, 30 minutes just to send them to school. There was kids that took a train ride that can take anywhere from 40 minutes to an hour to get to the school. So you had kids from a bunch of different towns that came to the school. But this particular kid was a local kid, and he was actually very, very intelligent. He had a photographic memory, which I thought was just really, really cool. And but he would get picked on just because of how he looked and how he spoke, and oftentimes he was by himself. And I made it a point to just sit down with him and talk to him here and there, not really thinking much of it. And then fast forward towards the end of the year, I was at my best friend's baseball game, and this woman comes up to me. I've never seen her before, but she comes up to me and she taps me on the shoulder. She's like, "Excuse me, are you Andre Spruell?" I was like, "Yeah, that's me. I'm him." And she mentioned, she's like, "First off, you're an amazing basketball player." I was like, "Thank you." Again, ball is life. But more importantly, she mentioned that she's like, "Oh, I am so-and-so's mom." And I was like, "Oh my gosh." I was like, "Nice to meet you." And I was talking to her, and she mentioned how a lot of kids picked on her son and how much it affected him when he came home. But he mentioned how someone like myself that just took the time to, hear him out and just be friendly with him, and just how much it impacted him and how much it made his day and allowed him to just keep going despite the amount of ridicule that he was getting. And that's something that meant so much to me, because again, growing up in the middle of the fence, it was something that, again, I never felt like I was better than someone else and things like that. And that was such an advantage in order to be able to express empathy towards others. And especially in this day and age, the act of expressing empathy, it's obviously easier to express it to your family and close friends and things like that. But I feel like it's much harder to express that towards your peers and strangers and people that you don't know and things like that. Regardless of your agenda or anything like that, it's always important to express empathy towards others and just be kind. It costs the same to be kind and empathetic as it does to be an asshole or, just someone that is just always mean or angry. So just something to keep in mind. So again, today in this episode, we reviewed the adultification of Black children, the advantages of growing up on the tough terrain side, and what it means to grow up with gratitude and empathy. And if I were to leave a message or a takeaway from this, with every episode, it's important to realize that no matter what side of the fence you grew up on, we're all more alike than we think. And the purpose of this is to bridge that socioeconomic gap that is between us, especially in this country and throughout the world. So, again, thank you guys for tuning in to this latest episode. Please be sure to check this out on your favorite podcast streaming platform, Apple Podcast, Spotify, whatever your favorite podcast streaming platform is. And also be sure to check it out on YouTube if audio only is a little too much for you. And if you are on the podcast streaming platform or YouTube, please be sure to subscribe. And if you're on YouTube, hit the little notification bell so you could be the first to be notified when the latest episode drops. And again, no matter what side of the fence that you grew up on, we're all more alike than we think. My name's Andre Spruell. Catch you guys next time.